Okay, we should be recording. All right, sorry everybody. They've changed everything since we last did this in October. Um, so again, if you can't see my screen in Photoshop, just unmute yourself and let me know, and I'll see if I can fix that. But welcome everybody. I know there's some that have not been on here before. At least I don't recognize your name, and these are very informal, as you could tell from our discussions here in the beginning. Very informal. Just if you have a question, you can interrupt me, unmute yourself, and just ask me a question. We haven't done this since October because I got really busy in November, and then we stopped for the holidays. So we've been doing this almost 2 years now. And the objective has always been to make it as simple as possible and try to go through as if you don't know much about Photoshop, because that was the thing that got me started with this. So many of you out there were saying, I just get so frustrated, I just quit, and I don't know how to get around. I don't understand this and that. So we started a couple of years ago very simply by talking about the interface and how to get around. And now we've kind of migrated to talking about other things. And tonight we're going to talk about brushes. We started talking about brushes back in October, and then we got interrupted. And I'm going to kind of start over talking about brushes. First, I just want to do a little plug for our camera club. There's only 8 of you out there, so some of you I know have been attending the camera club. If you haven't been attending the camera club meetings, you're really missing out, because this club has some amazing photographers in it and some really good people that really want to share. And the camera club is one way that we do that. And it just came, I just decided I wanted to mention that because a couple of weeks ago when we had John Fisher on, it was such a really good meeting. John is such an accomplished photographer and a great guy, and really went through some really cool things that you can do. And he talked about exposure blending, and he talked about focus stacking, and doing that with your landscape images. He's a landscape photographer primarily. And, the exposure blending is nothing more really than HDR, the old HDR, except that it's doing it manually. So exposure blending is basically shooting 3 images and exposing for the highlights, exposing for the midtones, and exposing for the shadows, and then blending them all together manually, which basically is what HDR does whenever you do it in the system. It's just that you have a lot more control when you do it yourself. And he was really good at explaining how he did that, and had some amazing images. Excuse me. He also talked about focus stacking, which focus stacking, if you don't know what that is, it's basically shooting for different focal points in your image and then blending your images together so that everything in the image is in focus. And it really creates some really crisp, nice images. I was kind of amazed that he does it manually, because that means that he's pretty accomplished and pretty meticulous about making sure what's in focus. I know that, I don't know about other cameras, but I know that Nikon's latest, or most of their new cameras at least, have focus stacking in the camera. And I can't imagine not doing it in the camera, because it would be very difficult for me. But that's something that I've been interested in and got involved in just in the last month. And it was kind of interesting that he was also discussing it. So I was very interested in hearing that. But anyway, on to other things. I just want to be sure and put a plug in for that, so you guys know that we really have some good folks that do some presentations. So when that comes around, Chris will contact us all whenever our next camera club meeting comes around, and who's going to be discussing. Take a few minutes to listen to that, because it's usually something really, really good. So
it's always the first Tuesday of every month is camera club. It's 7 o'clock on a Zoom meeting until we can meet in person.
And by the way, when we were meeting in person, it was so much fun, because there's like 3 or 4 of us involved in presenting things. So you get your choice of which one, you know, it could be printing, it could be learning how your camera works, it could be flash photography, it could be, you know, splash photography, it could be lots of things, drone photography we went through. So it's just a lot of different things, and really looking forward to getting back at the Coil House for that. But in the meantime, we got some great presentations online. So first Tuesday every month. Thanks, Chris. So what I want to do is talk about brushes, and I'm going to talk about brushes in general in the beginning, because I think that you know, a lot, some of you are probably going to go, oh man, I already know that, I know what that is. But there are certain things, little nuances about some of the things we're going to talk about that maybe you don't know, and hopefully this will help you understand a little bit better if we talk about brushes in general first before we start talking about creating brushes. You know, how do we work with the brushes, you know, in regard to you know, hardness and size and opacity and all those kinds of things. What do all those mean, and how can you use them to make them useful to you? So let's see, I have a little cheat sheet here, so let me make sure. I use a brush on almost every image, and if you're in Photoshop, and you know, you're almost always going to use a brush. You know, whether you use the brush tool or not, you know, if you use the clone stamp tool, if you use the healing brush, if you use you know, the dodge and burn tool, the smudge tool, all of those utilize brush techniques. Whether you're brushing a color on something, or if you're brushing into a mask, or whatever the situation is, you're almost always using a brush. So it's pretty important to know how to use it, and the little characteristics and definitions. So that's what I wanted to make sure that we went through. So let's start by looking at the brush panel. And the brush panel is basically where your brushes are stored, and different things, characteristics about adding brushes, deleting brushes, grouping brushes, and all that sort of thing. So in the toolbar, and I have moved my toolbar over here to the right because I wanted all this real estate over here for my picture. So it's a little different than most people, but over here I've selected the brush tool, and you'll notice that up in the top is an options bar, and the options bar changes based on which tool you have. So it's context sensitive. That's what we used to call it when I worked at Oracle and taught our clients how to use our software. But this is, it's context sensitive. So based on the context that you select over here, it has different properties up here in the options bar. Now, we're not going to talk about the options bar in general, because we actually did this back, gosh, a year and a half ago, whenever we first started talking about what all these things in the toolbar were. So that's recorded, and it's out on the YouTube channel, and that would be probably the best place to go to get a better definition of every one of these items. But we are going to talk about opacity up here, and we're going to talk about flow, but we'll talk about those in just a minute. Like I said, I wanted to talk about the panel first. And if you look up here, you can see, and I'm looking, and hopefully everybody can see where my cursor is. In the upper left, where it says 800, that shows that I have a soft brush at 800 pixels. And if I click this little arrow, it opens up the brush panel. Now, this is one way to get to the brush panel. There are two other ways to get to the brush panel as well, two other ways that I know of. If you have your brush selected and it's over the image, just right click and it opens up the brush panel. I mean, that's as easy as it gets. And it's exactly like the other brush panel. Then you could also have a panel over here, which I have selected here, and you click that, and it's almost like the other one. The difference is up here, it only has size. It doesn't have angle or softness, hardness. So those are not there. So I actually rarely use this one. I typically right click to open it up, because again, it gives me exactly the same thing if I click over here. And what you have here is you have a little slider for your size. So you can see my size is 800 pixels. If I make it smaller, you can see it smaller over here. See it larger over here. Hardness is at 0, so it's soft as it gets. Come over here, it's as hard as it gets, and so on. This is your angle right here. If you had, this is a round brush, so if you turn it, it doesn't really do anything. but you can drag these and you can make it more elliptical. So now you have an elliptical brush. I never use that, but I think it's kind of neat to tell you about. But you can use this to turn it. If you had one of these other brushes down here, you could use this to turn it. But there's an easier way, and we'll get to that later. Down here, you've got the last 7 brushes you used, and then you have your brush groups. And in this, you've got, these are all the brushes that I have loaded right now. Most of these are brushes that I either come with Photoshop or brushes that I've downloaded or brushes that I've created. And you can see here that you've got channel brushes, legacy, dry media, and so on and so on. You just open these up and you've got different kinds of brushes that you can use. Over here is the flyout menu. You just click on that and it opens this up. You can see, you can create a new brush preset from here. I never do that from here, but you could. You can create a new brush group. And if you create one, I can click on this and I can create one called RTPC. And now I have a group down here. It doesn't have any brushes in it, but I have a group down here and I can create brushes or move brushes in there. And then we have our RTPC brushes. You also have in this little section here, what you want to see here. So I want to see brush name and brush tip. I don't care anything about brush stroke, but if I click on that, it shows the stroke that each one makes. So if that's important to you, then you can click that and turn it on. Turn off brush name, and now you don't know what they're called, but you have an icon and a brush stroke. So I typically have it like you just saw it right here, because this is the way I see brushes. Doesn't mean it's the right way, it's just the way I do it. Then you have additional preset info, search for, you have a toolbar. This is the first maybe it's the second version that actually has a search bar in it. This is fairly new. It used to not have this. So if you know the name of your brush, you can actually search for it by name. Used to, if you had 5,000 brushes in here, you just have to group them well and have an idea of where to go to find it. But now you can actually do a search. So that's pretty cool. And if you don't do that, if you never use that, you can turn it off and it goes away. Show recent brushes, which is this. And import brushes, append default brushes. Get more brushes is something I wanted to be sure to tell you about. If you click on that, it takes you to Adobe. And Adobe has some free brushes that you can download. And they're Kyle's brushes. Let's see, I think I've got some in here that I opened a minute ago. They'll say Kyle's. See, Kyle's spatter brushes, Kyle's concept brushes. Those came from Adobe. So if you go over there, you can download those brushes for free. And then legacy brushes. Some time ago, and I don't remember which version, but some time ago, they changed the brushes that come with Photoshop. And the legacy brushes that have been out there forever were some really good brushes. So they don't load those automatically. So if you haven't loaded any brushes, if you just have the default ones, you probably don't have these legacy brushes. So all you have to do is click there and it'll load the legacy brushes. And inside there is some pretty good brushes. So you got a whole bunch of stuff here that is pretty cool to play with. So anyway, that is it, and that's the brush panel. Is there any questions about that at all? Okay. Well, that was pretty quick. Now let's talk about the characteristics of a brush. There's 4 things that I think are really, really important when talking about a brush. There's the opacity and flow, opacity and flow, which are these 2 up here. There's the hardness and softness, which is pretty important. We'll talk about that. There's the size, so you can how to change the size. And then there's the shape. And we just looked at a bunch of brushes that have all different kinds of shapes. So let's talk about the opacity and fill first, or flow. I keep calling it fill. It's flow. So you'll notice up here, opacity at 100%, flow at 100%. So whenever I paint with the brush, it gives you black because I'm painting with black. So it's 100% black. Makes sense, right? because it's 100%. So if I change the flow to say, I mean, the opacity to say 20%, it only gives me 20%, right? I mean, that makes sense. If I paint again over it, it adds another 20% and then another 20% and so on, okay? Until you finally get to black. So the difference, if I change that back to 100% and flow to say 20%, what's going to happen is it's going to give me 20%. And if I don't let up and go over it again, another 20%, another 20%, it builds up that way. If you have, until it gets to 100%. If you have flow or opacity set to 20%, then it never gets over 20%. So there you go. It keeps, I'm on top of it and painting and painting and painting, and it never gets above 20% because opacity is set for 20%. So how does all this, what does all this mean? Okay. And let me give you an idea in a real world situation. Let's see if I can find the right image for this. Let's just use this one for example. Well, all right. This may be familiar too. This is in Joplin. And let's say that I want to darken this water down here, and I want to darken this more than I want to darken this, okay? Well, there's a few ways to do that. Let's say I'm going to do a curves layer, and I pull this down, and then I'm going to invert this or paint it with black so that I can just paint in the darkness, right? Everybody follow that? And if I have, say, 100%, then it's going to paint 100%, except if I'm painting, I need to paint white. It's going to paint 100% of that darkness in because I've got 100% and 100%. So I don't have a choice. I can come in here, and even if I do just light with my pen tool, it's still going to paint 100%. So another thing I could do is I can change the opacity to 20%, and then I could come in here and paint this 20%, maybe up here, and then I could let up and come back down here and paint again, and then maybe come in here and paint again until I get it as dark as I want it up to 20%. Okay, so I could do that, and when you look at the mask, you can tell that it's painted less up here than it is down here, right? So you also could set your opacity to 20% and your flow to say 5%. Oops, set it at 50. There we go, 5%. And then come in here, and it's only going to paint 5% each time. So I come in here and I paint this, and I paint up here, and that only gives me 5%. Then I come in here and I can paint again, and then paint up here a little bit. And then I decide that I like it up here. So then I want to just continue painting down here. And I just kind of leave it down. And what I did then, I don't think you could see my cursor. What I did was I painted all over it with one stroke, which is 5%. And then I did it again at 5%. And then I decided that was dark enough. So I came down here and I just started painting back and forth like this until I got to 20%. So if you look at my mask, you can see that this is painted more than this area up here. So that's how you can kind of use fill or flow. So let's try it. Let's look at it again and do it a little bit slower so that maybe you can follow a little easier. So one more time. I'm painting, flow is at 5%, which means each stroke is only going to be 5%, but it's never going to go past 20%. That's what this means. So I'm going to lay down 5%, then 5%, 5%, 5%. I get to 20%. That's when it stops adding darkness. So if I take this and I paint over the entire image, entire water here, that's one. Now I'm painting back down here again, paint up here one, and then I start painting down here. It should get a lot darker down here at the bottom than it does at the top. And if you look at the mask, You can see that. It's painted more in here and less in up here. So does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. Okay.
Yes.
That's kind of how you can use flow along with opacity. You protect yourself from adding too much by placing the opacity at the most that you want to add, but then your flow allows you to only paint a little bit at a time. And let me show you another way that I use this. Let me just black again. I have, I think it's this image. Yeah, this image of this girl, a cheerleader. Let's say that I want to put a shadow behind her. So if I do, I can paint on the background and I can have my opacity like this again. And I can just come in here with black and just kind of start painting. And I'm painting behind her, even though it looks like I'm painting on top of her. I'm actually painting behind her because I'm painting on the one below her. Now this may not show as much because I'm only going up to 20%. So let's back this off and let's go up to, and let's go 10% with, oops, 10% with flow, and let's go to 30% with opacity. So let's do it again. And I'm just going to paint in here, and I'm not letting up. I'm just painting until I think I've got it dark enough. Put a shadow behind her. So you can see that that's one way that you can use flow and opacity. So see, I've got kind of this shadow back behind her like that. So I can use this all the time during my composites. So that's one way. You can see the layer over here on the right, lower right, what I've actually painted and how it got to only 30%. But it went in just a little at a time. And when I felt comfortable that I was done, then I could stop. So that's pretty much how you use flow. Now, to be honest with you, I don't use flow very often. I've gotten so used to using opacity that I typically have flow set to 100% and I just use opacity. But I'm warming up to this a little bit more and more. There are some photographers out there that I've watched on different YouTube channels and folks that I know, and they swear by flow. And in fact, they have opacity kind of set at a fixed amount and they use flow for everything. And I can see where it could be really, you could really get hooked on that, because basically I could have had it set at 100% and just pull this up when I was done and it looked right to me. So that's another way to use it. So fill and opacity. If we feel comfortable with that, we can move on. And I hopefully that last one especially made a difference in understanding how it works. So if there are no questions, I'll move on. So let me just talk first about how to change these numbers up here. You have a couple of ways. You can come up here and you have this slider and you can change it. For me, I have kind of a jumpy hand, so it's kind of hard for me to get it exactly what I want. So there's like 60%. Then I come over here and I can do the same with flow. Make it 50%, if I'm careful, right there. Or you can just hit a number like 5, turns it to 50%. 7 turns it to 70% for opacity. If you want it to be 75%, hit 7.5 in quick succession. If you hit just 7 and then hit 5, it goes to 50. So 7.5 like that changes it to 75. Flow, you have to push the shift key. So flow is like 35, or I could go 40, 90, and that sort of thing. So those are kind of shortcuts on how to change those numbers easily as you're working. And that's one of the reasons why I typically use opacity. It's so easy to do that, and I've gotten used to just painting it in. But I think flow has a lot of merit as well. Excuse me. Okay, so let's talk about hardness and softness. And hardness and softness sounds like a pretty simple thing, but it's something you really need to think about when you're painting, And I think you probably already know this, but let's just point these things out. For example, if it is 100% soft, and we can change that this way, so this one's already 100% soft, we can just, you get something that looks like this, right? So you got these gradated edges all the way around. And it's you know, when you paint, it's going to paint that gradation into the edges. If you had 100% hardness, then it looks like this. And notice that it has these little humps all along here. That's because, well, we'll talk about spacing in a minute, but that's because whenever you drag this across, it's not able to fully paint in each one of those because of the spacing. But anyway, you probably wouldn't notice that whenever you're using it for painting along. But I think it's important to understand when you use either one of these. So let's go to another image. And let's look at this image right here. This is in Waxahachie on one of our walks. And let's say I want to replace it with this sky that I've got over here. Sky replacements, I know that's another subject, but let's just, for grins, let's just say that it's okay to do. So we're going to come in here and I need to paint out the sky that I have. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, but let's say that you don't know how to do anything except this. This method of painting, just painting it out. So I'm at 100% hardness now. So if I come in here and start painting with black, not white, and start painting, that edge, it's pretty hard sometimes for you to get that edge just absolutely perfect. And it shows whenever you have a hard brush. So if you don't get that edge absolutely perfect, you're going to have some bleed through, okay? So that's one reason, and don't worry about how this looks up here because you'd just paint over it like this and you'd be fine. So it must not be, oh, it's 75%, no wonder. Okay, there we go. So anyway, that's one of the things about painting with a hard brush. You know, even on a straight edge, it's very hard to get it exactly right. So let's talk about a soft brush. So let's see. Let's make it 100% soft. Whenever to get out of this screen, I usually just click over here, or you can click up here somewhere. If you click on the screen, you've got to paint. So just a little tip there. Now, 100% soft brush, it's going to be real soft. And if you get on the edge, what's going to happen is you're going to bleed onto the building. So see how that works? Bleeding onto that building is going to be a problem with a 100% soft brush. So here's what I do. Let's get rid of all these. I typically, when I'm doing a straight edge like this, I typically go to a semi-hard brush, somewhere around 75, 85%, somewhere in there. I kind of like 75, I think. It's a little softer. And once again, if I click over here to get rid of that screen, it's going to paint, but that's okay in this case. So with a 75% hardness, you tend to get a little bit of bleed, which is exactly what you're looking for. So if this is not enough for you to paint well, then add a little bit more, take a little bit away. But the point is that for a real hard brush, it's very difficult to hide the edges. For a real soft brush, you bleed quite a bit for something like this. So let me give you, here's a little bonus tip that I wanted to be sure and share with you. Let me go back over to this other image right here. If I want to paint a straight line, most of you probably know this, but some of you don't. I click, hold the shift key, and click somewhere else, and it paints a straight line. That's all there is to it. So paint, shift, paint, and it gets a straight line. So for this image, if I wanted to paint this straight line, now this isn't a straight line. And I know, you know, I found that out during when I was preparing for this, but it's kind of straight. So you might have to go at it a few times to get it perfect. So you click here and then come down here and click. And see, it's not quite a straight line. So you may have a little bit of work to do here to get it perfect. But using this technique is really cool because it saves a lot of time. And if you just keep the shift down, you can just keep pressing along here. You can see that I did actually miss a couple places. So anyway, I'm being real sloppy here, but this is a really neat way to come in here and paint off this edge. And then of course you come in here and paint the rest of it in and get yourself a new sky.
It almost looks like the moon up there.
I guess it could be.
Look, there's the moon.
So anyway, that's softness and hardness, and it's really important whenever you're trying to, let's say you're trying to extract something. I know you guys probably don't extract very much, but if I'm extracting a person from an image to put them somewhere else, I typically will have a brush kind of like this, about 75%, because I want to get that, whatever that is I'm masking out, off of them. And this is exactly the way I do that. There's usually not any straight edges, so I'm usually going at it at the same way that you saw initially. So I can't use the trick of shift and tap, shift and tap to get a straight line. But sometimes I can, if they have on their arm or on their leg or somewhere like that, if I'm cutting them out in a straight line, or if they have some clothes on that have a straight line, I can use that. But it's just in the back pocket. So if you ever need to use it, you can just tap, shift and straight line like that. And it gets you a nice straight line painted. You can see it painted over here. So softness and hardness. Now, how do you change softness and hardness? You saw me doing it by right clicking and doing this. I never do this. I just was showing you that. There's other ways to change the softness and hardness. And the way that I do it is by pressing Option or Alt if you're on a PC, and then Control, and then dragging your mouse up. And you can see that percentage in the middle where it says hardness is going up and down. So that's the way that I change the hardness, because it's just so easy to come here and do it. And usually I'm going fast, and I just come here and drag it up 100%. And if I'm going to bring it down to like 75, I just go down here like this. And there's nothing hard fast about 75. As long as I'm in that range, 73, 80, even 85 sometimes will work great for me. But that's how I change the softness or hardness of the brush. So that's a little shortcut there. Okay, so let's go back now. And any questions on that? Softness, hardness is a pretty simple concept. And we'll see here in a little bit when I do some other stuff, how it comes into play. If there's no question about that, let's talk about size. Now, size matters. It does. You saw how I changed the size of the softness of the brush, right click. Well, you can do the same thing here to change the size. However, that's not the way I do it, because you can't see it in real time. You can't see the brush change. You have to bring it over here and look at it, and then go back and change it, bring it over and look at it, and go back and change it, and that sort of thing until you get the size you want. You can also change it by using the bracket keys next to the P key on your keyboard. Your right key increases it 10 pixels per click, and your left key reduces it 10 pixels per click. And I do that all the time, but I've gotten more used to, again, pressing the Option or Alt key, and then the Control and left or right. If you go, instead of up and down to smooth, to do hardness, and left and right is size. So I do this because you can get exact pixels. You don't have to go 10, per or whatever. But there's lots of times when I'm painting, and I'm especially dodging and burning, and I'm wanting to make my brush smaller or bigger, then I'm hitting the keys here, going back and forth. Got my fingers on those keys as I'm painting, going back and forth. So let's see, I don't think I have an image for that. But if I were doing dodging and burning, we can look at this one. And if I were doing dodging and burning in here, and I do the dodging and burning using the curves, and I have an action for it. So I just click right here and run the action. It gives me this. So this is dodging, and I sit here with my fingers on those two bracket keys. Right now it needs to be smaller. And I just come in here, and if I want to dodge this a little bit right there, and then I'll come over here and I'll make it a little bit bigger, and I'll do this area, and then I'll make it a little smaller, and I'll come in here and do this area right here. So I'm just going back and forth with the keys, the bracket keys, and they work perfect for doing that. And I was painting black on black, so I didn't see anything. But you get the idea. You can use the bracket keys, they have their place. But if I'm in here and I just want to paint, a color or something, say I want to change this blue car to red, and I come in here and I just change my foreground color to red, and then add a blank layer, change my blend mode to color, which is something we haven't talked about. But then I could come in here and paint over this car. Whoops. I have flow at 90%. And I'm doing any color. Oh, well, that's not important. This is not, I'm doing something wrong. But this is not what we wanted to talk about. But I wanted to show you that, I would come in here with my brush. This should be painting color only, and it's painting everything. So it's just slopping over it. Let's make it like 30%, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So you come in here, and I can have my hand on the bracket key and change the size so that I can paint along here. And again, I'm doing a real sloppy job, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea. So something like that. Okay. So another time when size matters, let's see, throw these away so I don't mess things up. Let's see what I got here. Okay, let's talk about this guy. Size not only matters with your brush tool, but it also matters with your, what's going on here? Also matters with, wow, something's happening here. Stop, there we go. It also mattered, well, I don't know what's going on. Let me, blank layer. Okay, here we go.
Your computer is taking over.
Well, I've had some issues here. Oh, you know what? It's actually the tool. So let me throw this away. It painted. So now let me create a new layer. Here we go. Okay, now we're in business. Okay, this is my healing brush. Now, when I'm removing blemishes, and this guy doesn't really have any blemishes, but I just wanted to show you. I make the brush just a little bit larger than the blemish. I come in here and I will sample right here and get rid of this and sample here. And I just have my finger on the Alt or Option key to do my sampling. And you can see that's how you get rid of blemishes, one way to get rid of blemishes. So that's when size matters for that. Now, I also wanted to show you the liquefy filter, which I don't use very often, but I wanted to show you here that whenever you're using liquefy, now we went through liquefy some time ago, and it's also on video for any of you that want to see it. But the forward warp tool, which is the one that really does all the work, your brush size needs to be pretty big. So let's say I want to push that shoulder in just a little bit. So I'm just going to make it this right here. Notice how the edge is just below his collar, and it's along the edge of his arm here. So I just want to kind of push that in just a little bit like that, and push this arm in just a little bit like that. And maybe if I come down here at the bottom, we've got this area down here, and I just want to kind of push that in so it doesn't look so bad, and then bring it in a little bit. So constantly changing the size of this until I bring that in. So that's another time when size matters on your brush. Now, in this instance, you don't have the ability to use the Option or Alt Control to get it exact. So you use the bracket keys to change it, or you could come over here and change it as well. So just a quick little thing on Liquify, but these are a couple of things that, you know, a couple of times that, you know, where size of your brush matters, and you need to make sure that you adjust it accordingly. So those are the different ways to adjust the size of your brush and that sort of thing. Okay. So get rid of that, give him his pimples back. And then, all right. The next thing to talk about is shape. And I'm not really going to say anything about shape, except that whenever you look at your brushes, whoops, sorry, I don't have the brush selected here. Whenever you look at your brushes, these are the shapes I'm talking about. So whether it's a circle or whether it's a butterfly or whether it's whatever, you know, I have some crack brushes here I use to put cracks in my walls and stuff like that. So those are the shapes I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm not going to really get into that. We're going to be looking at all different kinds of shapes here in just a second in creating brushes. So any questions about anything that I talked about so far? I know that a lot of this is stuff that you already knew, but I thought kind of putting it all together in a comprehensive way will make it a little easier to understand everything about brushes, or maybe there's some little nuances there you didn't know about, didn't really know about flow, for example, or whatever. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. So no questions, I will move on. Now we're going to talk about creating your own brushes. So I'm going to create a couple of brushes just because it's so easy and show you just how to do it. Now there's basically two kinds of brushes. There's what I call a stamp brush, and then there's the stroke brush, or whatever you want to call it. I call it a stroke brush, where when you use your brush, you can either just click to stamp it, and I'm painting in red here. How come it did? Oh, because of my flow. So let's go back to 100% and 100%. Okay, so when you stamp, it still didn't do anything. And I am here, and I'm painting in red. Oh, I'm in color. There we go. Now, there we go. Okay, so you have the stamp brush, which basically you just click and it stamps. And then you have the stroke brush where you do that, okay? And those are basically the two kinds of brushes. And we're going to talk about both of them, how to create them. And basically you create them the same way, except in the stroke brush, you just add a few extra attributes. So with the stamp brush, we're going to create, I'm going to show you how to create a watermark to put on your images. And you probably already have this if you're interested in it, but just to kind of show you how easy it is. Back in 2014, I think, I went to Texas school, and our instructor showed us how to do this, and I just kind of dismissed it because I didn't really want it because my handwriting is so awful. But he showed us how to create your handwriting and create it as a watermark. So you're going to see here an example of why I didn't want to do it with my handwriting, because it's never been good and it gets worse as we go. So there's that, especially my last name. Let's see. That's not too bad. So there is.
Actually kind of creative. I like it.
So we're going to. What's that?
Certainly better than I could do.
Better than I can do on a tablet.
Well, that's why I had somebody else create my watermark for me. But I wanted to show you that it's, this is what we did in that class. And basically you do this and then you just say, create my brush. So if we come up here to edit, notice that define brush preset is grayed out. Well, I did this on purpose because I want you to see that there's a prerequisite for your ability to create a brush, and that is that the size of the image has to be 2,500 pixels or less. So if I come up here to image, on the long side, by the way, image size, this is 9,000, so I'm going to change it to 2,500, and it's going to give me a much smaller image here. And now if I do edit, define brush presets turned on. So now I come in here and you can call it whatever you want to call it. And we're going to just call it Bob's logo. And there used to be some buttons down here, and I don't know what happened to them, but one of those buttons was to tell it that you always want it to open at this size, which in this case is 1639. And I don't remember what the other checkbox was, but for some reason they're not there anymore. So I guess they weren't that important. So then you just click OK. And when you do, now you've got that brush turned on. And now I can come in here and I'm gonna make this bigger. I'm actually going to go back in history to change the image size back to what it was because I liked it what it was. But now I can come in here and I can just click and there's my watermark. So easy peasy, nothing to it, right? Now just right click now, and here it is down here, Bob's logo. And I'm just going to take that and move it into RTPC. And now it's in that group, Bob's logo. Okay. So simple as that in creating your own brush. Now, I do have a watermark out there. So what I can also do is come in here and do File, Place Embedded. You remember what Place Embedded and Place Linked are, right? I'm using those more and more. I want to go get that file and I want to embed it in here as a link. And mine is in my pictures library, and we're going to take the high-res black and bring it in, and you can see it's a lot better than my handwriting. So we'll get rid of, let's see, we'll just turn it off. So here is this, and now I can do exactly the same thing. Again, I've got to, since I changed the size back up, I got to change that to 2,500. And now I can do edit, define brush preset, and we'll call it Bob's real logo. And then I have that brush. And if I'm on here, then it should show up. So there we go. I have to have a editable layer, and a smart object is not an editable layer. So I'm going to go back now and change that size back to here. And now I can take this and add another white layer below it. And then come in here and paint, add my watermark to whatever I'm doing. So you could have an action that goes and grabs that brush and clicks it and puts it in there, or you could just go, click it in yourself. Now, personally, I do it a different way. I have the image, you saw a PNG image, and then I have an action that goes out there and grabs it and looks at the size of the image and places it in the right place if I wanted to do a watermark. But this is just another example of creating your own little watermark. So we'll do another one here, and let's see. I get rid of all these things. There we go. And I actually want to go back to the size. Not that important really, but yeah, I just like to keep this size that I have here. So let's do another one. And I just want to show you that you can create a brush out of anything. I have this image, you saw it a while ago, where I have her with this shadow. I can create a brush with this. So once again, image size. I have it already sized at 25 by 25. So all I need to do is do edit, brush preset. I'll call, her name is Rachel. Whoops, can't type, can't write, can't type. Pretty tough. Okay, so now I have her. I come back over here and click, and there's her picture. So, I mean, you could take a picture of your dog, you could take, whatever you wanted to and create a brush from it for a stamp brush. Send off a Christmas card or birthday card or whatever card and have a picture on it like that. So I just want to show you that. I mean, I wouldn't do this with her or anything, but, you can do it out of anything. So any questions about this kind of brush? Pretty simple. You guys are easy. I did want to show you, I have this on here. I wanted to show you those crack brushes just for grins. They're in here somewhere out there. And these I use all the time for when I'm doing composites. And I want it to have a wall maybe for a background. Okay. Well, the size, there we go, 5,000. I don't want it to be that big. Okay, let's make it a little bigger here. You can just click here. I'm on the right background. Here we go. Click here, and you have a little crack in the wall. So they've got brushes out there for everything. You can have a brush for dirt flying in the air. You can have a brush for smoke. You can have a brush for all kinds of things. And you're going to see that in just a minute when we start creating our other brushes. But I just thought that was kind of cool to show you that. Let's see, was there anything else I want to show you? Here's light rays too. If you ever want to add any light rays into your image, I found these, and you can just paint that. Oops, paint it with white instead of black though.
So Bob, did you order most of these specialized brushes or
no.
Download them from somebody, or did you create some of these yourself?
I created some of these, but most of these came from free downloads. And some of them I stumbled across, and some of the crack brushes, I went looking for those because I needed them for a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And others I purchased, but most of them are just free downloads. Like this one right here is just a free download. And then so the good thing about
you could do it yourself if you wanted to invest the time, but there's plenty of stuff already out there. So why spend that time doing that?
Well, that's true. And the thing about the stuff that's out there is the attributes that they have. It may not quite do what you want it to do, but it with a little bit of tweaking, you can get it to do what you want it to do. So when we get over to, get in just a minute, when we get into some of these brushes, we're going to create them from scratch, but you'll see that how easy it is to go in and make changes. And if you have something that almost does what you want, then you can go in and play around with the attributes. But most of these are free that I got. All of these right here, these eyelash brushes actually came with a class. These DCI brushes, these are for retouching. I got these brushes like 10 years ago, hardly ever use them. But most of those are free. This is Woody Walters exclusive or explosive powder brushes. I bought those. Dust particles free, dirt free, fine art brushes free. Paul Trenny, he's a guy that I just took a class for, and I got those for free from that class. So yeah, a little bit of everything. If you wanted to create flying dust, for example, you could go Google flying dust brushes, and you'll get 1,000 hits, and then you just have to figure out which one works for you. So they're pretty cool. All right, so much for that. Now, let me turn that off and shoot it. Okay. Now turn it off. There we go. Okay, so now let's talk about creating the stroke kind of brushes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a brush, and you can make copies. You can like I just said, you can take a picture of your dog. You can do whatever, or you can just find a picture on the internet. We're going to use this butterfly, for example, that that Paul Tranny that I talked about, I got this from him. But if you could just, if you just wanted to, go out and get a picture or something of a butterfly, you could just cut out this butterfly and you have a real neat little brush here of this butterfly. See how nice that is? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this brush and we're going to expand on it. Now, it's not here. This is after you've already got brushes created. So this isn't going to do us much good right now. What we want to do is go to brush properties. And there are two basic ways to go to brush properties. One is with the panel, and I have the panel over here for brush settings is what they call it. I call it properties, same thing. You can click on that and you get, the brush panel opens, brush property panel. You can also, I'll close that. I have it docked over here, so it's always available. Excuse me. But you can also just press F5, and F5 brings up the same thing. So a shortcut right there, and I love it. And I want to make this just a little bit bigger here so we can see it. And whenever you open this, usually what you see is this brush tip shape, and that's where you want to start. Now what it has here is all of the brushes that you have. And for me, this is totally useless because there's no organization. I really don't know how these are organized. You can't tell what you have, and you cannot change how you look at them. They're here, they're what they are. If you know where, if you know what it looks like, you can come in these little tiny things and finally find it. But it's just as easy to go select it from the brush panel and then come over here and work with it. You can see that the blue box is around the butterfly that we're using right now. But the important things are this list of items here and this area down here at the bottom. And we're going to start with this area down here at the bottom. And this is your brush tip shape information. And a lot of this should look familiar. You have the size of the brush. You have, once again, you have the angle. And if you want to make it flat like this, you can. This is exactly like it is over in the brush panel. You also have an angle right here, which you also have up here. It's the same thing. And then the roundness, and you have flip X and flip Y. Basically, that means I want to turn it, flip horizontal or flip vertical, which you can do. But the important thing is down here. At the moment, the important thing is the spacing. If you grab this slider and move it out, it's going to space out your butterflies. So that now, whenever I come over here, I've got this. If I don't have it spaced out like that, I have this, which doesn't give you anything. So now I've got these butterflies spaced out. Actually, I don't anymore. I'm going to move them over like this at about 150% in that area. And there's no magic as to what the percent is. This box down here, this preview box is invaluable. This is going to give you a preview of everything you select. So this is what you keep an eye on whenever you're making some selections. So now that we have that, we know that we have it. And if I wanted to turn it around, I could flip X and it turns it around the other way. Okay. If I want it to be upside down, I could flip Y and it'd be upside down. I don't want it to be upside down. I don't care if it's left or right, so we'll just leave it like this. The angle, if I want to turn it, I can turn it, but I'll leave it like it is. It's 0. And roundness, 100%. Let's make that just for grins, make it 50. And now it becomes kind of flat, which we don't really want. So we'll keep it at 100. Okay. So that's what all of these things do. And the most important one for me anyway is the spacing, initially anyway. Sometimes you might want to flip the X or Y, but and I rarely use the angle or the roundness or any of this. But doesn't mean you shouldn't. It just means I rarely use it. but this spaces them out pretty nicely. Now we can come up here and let's click the first one called Shape Dynamics, and notice that it changes to your properties here. Everything, again, this is context sensitive. So every time you click on one of these, it's going to open a different one. Okay, now I don't want to select those. I just want to go to Shape Dynamics. Okay, so Shape Dynamics is altering, just like you would think, the shape of the image. Jitter, if you think of jitter as randomness. So if I push the size jitter, that means that we're going to change the size in a random way up to a certain percent. So for example, if I go up here to say 50% or in that area, it's changing the size here up to about 50%. So it's going to have smaller size, it's going to have a regular size, and then it's going to go down 50% and back and everything in between. Okay. Now the control here, I'm not going to go through all of these, but basically pin pressure or pin tilt, and stylus is, I don't have a stylus wheel, and I'm sure most of you don't. I don't remember what fade is, but pin pressure, I'm using a tablet. So I could say pin pressure, and that size jitter would be controlled by how hard I push down on the pin. I'm going to leave it off just for grins right now. So we have size jitter selected. So now let's see what happens. Okay, it didn't change very much. You can see this one's littler. This one's a little bit smaller. So let's make it even bigger. Let's go up to say 85%, something like that. And now let's try. Okay, there we go. Now you can see quite a bit of change. Maybe we want to make it 75. So you just kind of play with that until you get something that makes sense. So now we come in here and you've got all over the place, okay? And you can have a minimum diameter, which means the smallest I want it to be is a certain amount. And we're going to leave that blank. Angle jitter is what it sounds like. It changes. It's the randomness of how it angles, how it turns. So watch the view down here as I move it. See, it's going to allow them to turn different ways. So if you want them to be able to be almost upside down or sideways, then you can go up, let's try it at 25% just for grins. And now we'll come in here and you can see they're all over the place, flying at different ways, okay? And that's controlled by the angle jitter. If it's too much, you don't want them to be upside down or whatever, then bring it back. If it's not enough, add some more. It's just one of those things that you'll play around with to get what you're looking for. Now, the roundness jitter is how much you want to flatten them out to make it look like that they're turning. So if I watch it down here, as I push this, they're going to kind of flatten out some of those so that it may look like that they're turning and at different angles. So now if I come across here, you've got some that are kind of flattening out and turning. So it gives them a little bit more dynamics. Okay, so those are, excuse me, those are the shape dynamics. And it's just a matter of kind of playing around and getting what you want. Let's look at scattering next. Scattering is how much you want them to scatter, exactly what it sounds like. And you can have it on both axes. So they scatter x-axis and the y-axis, or you can just go the y-axis. So if I push this without pushing that, see, they just go up and down. And if we go, and this goes to 1,000%. So I'm not sure what that really means, but we're going to go at 400% for now. And again, we're not going to worry about the control or anything. So let's just see what that does. And if we push this, they're kind of scattered everywhere. And see, it looks like that you have some in the distance because they're small. You have some that are up close. You have them turning every which way but loose. So this is getting close to what I would think that you might want in a brush like this. If you were wanting to do some kind of butterflies flying around something. So if you wanted it to be like in a distance, you could make this brush pretty small, and that way they don't get real big, and you could have them flying in the distance like that. So you've got all these butterflies flying around in the distance, being scattered by this scatter, and I could push both axes and they would spread out further too. So let's do that. So now we have them all spread out in different ways. So kind of cool if you're into that sort of thing. Now, another thing you could do, and I don't do this very often, but we could go to color dynamics. Color dynamics is kind of cool because you can use the foreground and background jitter to determine the colors. And then you can do how much do you want to change the color, saturation, brightness. So we could come down here and say foreground, and let's make it kind of a yellow color maybe. I don't know. Yellow color like that. And then a background color, we could make maybe a red, something like that. I don't know. And then we could come in here, and now there are all different kinds of really light colors. And we may want to move the brightness up a little bit. Let's make it like 50%, see what happens. Not too cool. But anyway, you know, you could play around with that. Your background, foreground, maybe I want it to be not as random. Maybe just like 10%. And the hue jitter, let's see what that does. See what it's doing is it's taking the yellow and the red, and it's using all the colors in between because it's got a hue jitter at 10%. So it's not just the red and the yellow. It's also got some green in here and a little bit of, I mean, almost pure yellow there that's so light you can't even see it. But, you know, if you played around with these colors, you could probably get something kind of cool. This isn't too good, but you get the idea, I think. So that is it for butterflies. Do I have any? Oh, before we leave this, we need to, let's see, image size. Yeah, we need to save it, because if you don't, it goes away. When you go to select it again, it's going to be the same thing it was. So now I'm saving this to 2500, and now I can come in here and do edit, fine brush preset. That's because I didn't stamp it, I guess. There. Let's see what it does. Edit, fine brush preset. There we go. And now I can do butterflies, and I can save that. And now it's got all of this stuff saved into it, even though it shows that it doesn't. I hope it does. And then I right click and go over here to butterflies, move it over here, and let's see if I select it and come in here. No, it didn't save it. Well, I must have done something wrong there, but you need to save it whenever you create all of these, whenever you add all of these properties to it, you'll need to save it so that it maintains all of these properties. Now I screwed up there, so let's see if I can get it right the next time. So we're going to come over here, and now we're going to, instead of the butterfly, were there any questions about that? No questions. Okay. Well, let's look at the dove, and it's the exact same principles. Here's this dove, and I'm painting in yellow here. So let's go back to our default colors, and we have this really nice little dove here, and we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to press F5. We're going to go to brush tip shape, and I'm going to come down here to spacing. I'm going to push it out until they're a little far apart like this, maybe close to 200%. I'm not going to mess with any of this. Shape dynamics. Oh, first let's look at them. Okay, look pretty good. Shape dynamics, we're going to move this up till we get maybe 50% in that area. And we'll see. I may need to push that. Let's push that up a little more. Say 70%. There we go. We got some little guys in there. So that way it'll look like, that's somewhere in the background. And then we'll do angle jitter, so we can have some flying different ways. We'll go at about 20%. And now we can come in here and we've got them flying different ways. And round this jitter so that some of them look like they're flying down, maybe at 50%. So there we go. Pretty cool. And then we're going to come in here to scattering. And we're going to scatter maybe at 400%. And then we come in here and we got the scattering. So let's make the bird much smaller. And you've got something like that. So you can have a flock of birds out over a scene. Maybe it's maybe you have vultures or something and you have this dark scene that you're creating, or maybe it's just, you just want to show some birds on top of your image. So you can brush across with these birds, and that's all there is to it. If you just know these two things, and all I did was I didn't do anything with texture, dual brush, transfer brush, and none of that kind of stuff. You could, if you really want to get complicated, but I wanted to make it fairly easy for you guys in the beginning. Especially if you just look at shape dynamics and scattering, you're going to get some really cool stuff. So any questions on this one? That was really quick. Okay. I'm going to go over at least one more. See, I got a bunch of stuff up here. Let me see if there's something I wanted to do that I missed. Nope, took care of him, took care of her. Oh yeah, I was going to do that. Well, I'll do that in a minute. Okay, so one more time. Oh, let's see if I can. Now that's a bunch, so I don't want to actually have that many on there. So let's. Oh. Wow. Oh, I'm way down here. Okay. Okay. So let's just click and see if I can create a brush that has all that stuff in it. Dove. Set. Okay. Now I'm doing something wrong. I'll put a message out on our Facebook as to what I'm doing wrong here, because you need to know how to save these or it's futile. So I'm not, at the moment, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but I'm sure it's something simple. You'll need to be sure and save those. So I'll get that out there. So let's go over one more.
It will work perfectly once you're off this demonstration.
You know me well.
Murphy's Law or something like that.
I'm telling you, it's there's always something that goes wrong on one of these things.
Yep.
But,
that's called the real world.
Yeah.
So let's do one more. Right click, and I'm going to do a bug here. Actually, we can do two more, and one of them will be, I haven't practiced it, so it'll be interesting. So we're going to do this bug, and this is kind of a neat little bug. Oh, and I got an ant too. I'll do the ant as well. So we've got 35 minutes here. So it's the same kind of thing. If you want to have bugs crawling across your screen or something, then you can press F5 here. And let's see. We're going to get rid of that thing. Once more, we're going to click on brush tip shape. We're going to space it out. Maybe something like that. Then we'll go to shape dynamics. And I'm going fairly quickly because you guys should know, basically what I'm doing by now. And we'll go to about 45%, something like that. And it means it goes like this. So you got different sizes along there. You got little babies along with their mamas. And then angle jitter, if you want them to be turned kind of going a different way, maybe. So they're kind of all over the place. Roundness, I don't know if you'd want any roundness since this is a top view, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't think I want any roundness on a top view. But we do want scattering. So let's do some scattering here. We'll push it out this way. We'll actually use both axes as well. We'll do about 400%. And now when you come across here, you got bugs everywhere. Let's make it smaller so it's you can see it. So you got all these bugs across here. And you could even do more scattering. So that's, let's do it like 800%. And then you push it across here and you got bugs all over the place like that. And then across here and then across here. And now you got bugs all over your screen. So I could do in the shape dynamics, I could push the size up to say 70%. And try to get some bigger bugs in here. So anyway, you kind of get the idea. It's the same kind of thing we did before. So not much to it. Once you kind of get the hang of it, just using those two things, I think is kind of cool. So we'll do one more thing. That was bugs. I went over that really quick. And I won't even try to save that because it's not going to work. So let's do this, this ant. Where's that ant? There it is. He's kind of cool. I got him off the internet. So we're going to take him and we're going to do brush tip shape. We're going to bring him out like this, a little bit of spacing. And I'm going to flip X and Y so he's going the other way. And now we'll do brush dynamics. I'm going to have the sides kind of like this. And let's bring him down a little bit in size. And we've got this ant that comes across here like this. Kind of cool. And then we're going to have some angle jitter, maybe just a little bit of angle jitter. I don't really want much because I kind of like him like that. And then we have this kind of stuff. Put ants across there. I think I'm going to make the size jitter even more, maybe 70%. So you got big ones and little ones. Kind of cool. Roundness, maybe. So that's kind of neat. Scattering, we're going to do some scattering too. Both axes, and we're going to scatter, say 300%. So we're going to have to make them smaller. Oops, to get him all over the page. So there you go, a bunch of ants everywhere. And you could have them, one more time, I can make that angle a little bit more. Let's make it like 15. And then you got ants at all different angles everywhere. So that is, that's creating it with ants. Now I wanted to go over another one, and this is going to be an iffy one here, but we'll try it. Where I make a smoke brush. And I'm not real good at this, but I'll just show you what the process is. Usually I have to do this and play with it and play with it and play with it until I get what I'm looking for. Maybe we'll get lucky and it will go faster. So one of these images, this one right here, has this cloud image. And I'm going to take, I think, a piece of this and try to make a brush out of it. Let's try to find one that's kind of independent. So let's take this little guy right here. And I'm going to do, make sure I'm on the right layer here. I'm just going to come in here with my lasso tool and I'm just going to select it like this. Okay. And then I'm going to put it on its own layer. Then I'm going to turn this off. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a black layer below it. Let's see. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to cut this out using channels. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to channels. And if you remember the way this works from your luminosity masking, you look at each one of these independently and see which one gives you the most contrast. Hopefully we'll get one that does pretty good. Now, okay, green is better than blue. Okay, red is the best. So we're going to right click on red and duplicate the channel. Okay, we're just going to call it red copy. I'm going to select that, turn this off. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here on this and I'm going to do a Command L to bring up levels. And I'm going to try to get rid of all that black that's around that cloud. Okay, so I have a little bit of white. Okay, now I've got a distinct edge right there and a distinct edge right here that I'm going to have to deal with. So I'm going to come in here now, and now I'm going to grab my brush. Oops, I got my ant brush, so I'm going to have to change that and go to a soft round brush. General brush, a soft round brush. Come over here, and I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to paint with black and just kind of try to get rid of this edge here and this edge over here. And now I have kind of a soft cotton ball looking thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Command click. Oh no, it's too little. Oh, what was that about? Whatever can go wrong does go wrong. This is how I'm supposed to be able to get my, I guess maybe I was supposed to make it a lot bigger, but it's too little for it to select enough pixels. So whenever I do my Command click, it doesn't see anything. It's funny, you can't see it in the thumbnail over here either. It's probably because I did those last few things. So let's go back. See if I clicked it now, would it do it? Yeah, see it selects it now, but I don't want that one. So let's try one more time with the Command L the other way. And I may have to, I don't know if that's enough or not. Let's see if that's enough. Nope. Well, I've done this before, believe it or not. Let's see, let me back up just a little bit here. And let's do Command L again, and let's try not to go so far. Let's try that. And then come in here, because it's a lot brighter now. Maybe come in here and paint away some of these edges like this. It's probably not going to be as good as what I was hoping because it doesn't have the soft edges that I want. We can try that. Now let's see if it's enough. Oh, look at that. See, it's got these little things there, but that's what I want. So now I come back over here, and now I can put in a mask to mask it. And you can barely see it, but this is what I want. This is going to be my brush. Okay, so now I do edit. Oh, let me see if my image size. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, it needs to be I need to apply the layer mask. Now let's try it. Okay, find brush preset. So now I have a brush preset. I'm going to call this smoke. Okay. So now I have my brush preset called smoke. So now if I go back over here and oops, select smoke, which is what I have. And I come in here and I have this little puff of smoke. It's a little bitty thing. Okay, let's make it bigger. There we go. So now I have this little puff of smoke, which is really a cloud. You can see I didn't get the edges very good because I wasn't able to use the mask like I wanted to. So it's not going to turn out real good, but you kind of get the idea, I think, about how this thing works. But you can create this brush. Oh, did it create it? Where is that? Which one of these is it? Oh, I guess it's this one. Yeah. So why did it put it? It put it on a white, or did I? Okay, never mind. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. What I did was I put it on this white and then I tried to move it. So let me throw this away and do a blank layer. And now if I put a white layer below it, it gives me what I was looking for, I think. There we go. So there's my smoke. And now I can move it if I want to. Oh, shoot. It's because I'm on the wrong layer again. Up here. Now I brush. There. Okay. Finally. Sorry, guys. Now I can move it around. You see, it's got these edges that I didn't want. And again, that's because of the way I did it. I'll probably maybe redo this at some point and show it to you. Because this was just kind of off the cuff. I just thought I would do it since I had time. And I may try to do it again here in a minute. But basically what I would do now is I could come in here and do F5 with this brush. And once again, select. Okay, why is it not working? F5. Oh, I don't have the brush selected. There we go. That's why. Okay, F5 and I push tip shape, space it out, give me a cloud, maybe put it where it kind of touches like that. And then come in here with shape dynamics. You get a little bit of shape jitter, maybe 30%. Don't know that I really want any angle jitter or roundness. I'll just kind of flatten it out a little bit. Don't want any scattering really either, because I don't want it to scatter, because I want it to be, excuse me, I want it to be brush smoke that goes across. So I really don't need any scattering. And then I could play around maybe with some color dynamics to give it a little bit of color between black and white. So maybe something, we'll just leave it like that. We don't want any huge jitter really. Well, maybe a little bit to go between black and white to give it a little bit of gray. So now if we come in here with the brush, it's too big. Yeah, this looks like a cloud. But it's kind of what I want. So let's take these shape dynamics and give it a little bit of angle. Let's see if we can get something. And let's do it by pen pressure. Color dynamics, pen pressure, okay. Let's just see. So you can kind of, with a little bit of work, I could make this into some smoke that could, you know, smoke fog, whatever you want to call it. This looks pretty bad, but with a little bit of work and getting a better selection, and typically you want to get it from a cloud like that. So you can get it from a, you know, a big billowing cloud, or you could get it from the one that I just did. But I think it looks better if you have the big billowing cloud, which I didn't have a copy of. But if you could separate one of those, probably I needed to get a bigger copy. I got a little bitty section of that image. And if I had a bigger one, then I would be able to get those edges off and it would look better, and I could make it look, you know, make it look more like smoke here. This looks pretty crappy. But that's about all you do, you know, is come in here and select. And the only ones I really ever use are the ones that I've shown you. Shape dynamics, scattering, a little bit of color dynamics, really. Sometimes, you know, there may be some uses for these others, but I really haven't played enough with them to really be able to tell you what they do. So any questions on this? I know I was really rambling and doing a really bad job of showing it to you, but it's kind of the process that you can do. Just grab a little piece of a cloud and create a smoke brush with it. Any questions? No questions. No questions. I'm gonna. What's that?
Got the idea.
Well, hopefully, you know, we went over it several times, so hopefully you kind of caught on as to kind of what the process could be. It doesn't have to be this process, but it basically, I just wanted to show you different ways that you could create the brush, and then different ways that you could use the brush, and different ways, you know, to be creative with it. And so hopefully some of it caught on, and you know, in the back of your mind, you have it in the back of your mind. So if it ever come into a situation where you go, oh, I wish I could do that, then you go, oh yeah, I remember something about that. What was it? And then you have, whenever you look it up on Google or whatever, you go, oh yeah, I remember that. You know, hopefully that's kind of what this is for. All right, I want to show you one more thing that has nothing to do with brushes, but I just thought it's kind of cool. And I ran across this because I do composites, and I know you guys don't do composites, but I think it's pretty cool to show you. Where's that image? Oh, I lost my. Let's see. Well, I lost my Waxahachie building image. That's the one I was going to use. I must have closed it accidentally. Okay, well, I can open it because I know where it is. So hang in there for just a second. Let's see. Waxahachie. I think it's down in here somewhere. Ah, right there. Didn't open. Let's try it again. All right, I'm going to close this. Let me some room over here. There we go. Okay. What's that?
Never mind.
Okay, real quick. I wanted to show you how to do things in perspective. And I wanted to show you how to do it with a smart object to make it easily usable for whatever, you know, if you wanted to change it or something. Now, this is really nice if you, you know, if you're being creative, if you're working with something that has images or, you know, some object in it that is a little off of being directly in front of you. It's a little out of perspective. Like this right here is at a corner. You can't see my cursor. This up here, you know, it goes at an angle and it goes into a different perspective. So it's nice, you know, if you're doing something like that. Let's say I wanted this to say something over here, okay? And I had something that I used before and I can't remember what it was. But what we're going to do is I'm going to create a blank layer above this. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create it as, let's see. I'm going to do a marquee like this, and I'm going to fill it with white. Oops, wrong key. Fill it with white. There we go. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to save it as a smart object. Okay. So now I'm going to take this as a free transform tool and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say distort. And I'm going to take these corners and I'm going to match them here. And I'm not going to do an absolute perfect job, so I'm just going to do something to kind of get it close. Okay, so that it takes up this part of the building. Okay, and you can see, like I said before, that this is not perfectly straight. You can see right here that it's off a little bit. Maybe if I pull this down some, that helps. Yeah, okay. And then I can take this. Okay, so now I'm going to hit enter. So now I've got this set in here like this. It's a little bit off in this corner down here, but that's okay. It's close enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click on this layer, and it's going to open this up over here in another image. This is the way smart objects work. I hope you remember this from, I think we had a thing on smart objects, that a smart object is a container. And that container can contain filters, it can contain layers, it can contain a lot of things. In this instance, this smart object contains this little box that I created with my marquee tool. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, in this box, I'm going to use the type tool and press T for the type tool, or you can click on it over here. And I'm going to create a text box. And I'm going to come in here and type, and I'm going to have to play around with the text size, but I'm going to type, oops, oh, it's too big. Oh, well. Okay. I did type in there, but you can't see it. So, oh, how come it's not on there? Okay, let's try it. Let's see if it's too big or too little. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to take it, move it down a little bit. Just kind of size it in there. Okay, and it's in black. So now what I'm going to do is save it. And whenever I close it, it's going to take it back over here. And now see, I've got, if I could spell, sporting goods. But I have this along this side. Now, if I didn't have to fill that with white. I could have filled it with, transparency. But because I fill it with white, it has that. So what I can do is I can double click on this and I can get rid of this white. And there's a number of ways to get rid of the white. Okay. One of the easiest ways, let's see, it's this bottom one here. So what I can actually do is just turn that off. There we go. That's the easiest way. Save it, close it, and now I've got it over here. So see, it's in perspective because I created that block and put it in perspective. The good thing about this, though, is if I notice I misspelled it, I can come in here and put my I in there and save it again, close it again, and now it's got the I in there. So it's easily editable. And that's one of the cool things that you can do with this idea of how to put something in perspective. So if you were, one of the examples that I saw not long ago on, I forgot what it was, Photoshop World or something like that, where they were using like a deck of, not a deck of cards, but a deck of membership cards or something like that, or calling cards, that's what it was. And they went in there and they did one of these on every one of those, and then went in and changed one and changed them all and put everything in perspective. So I thought it was pretty cool if you're doing something like that. So again, this is more if you want to be creative or something like that. But I just thought it was interesting. I wanted to throw that in there. At some point, I think we need to talk a lot about smart objects because there's so many cool things you can do with smart objects and people just shy away from them. And it's, because they think they're complicated, and they are kind of complicated, but once you get the hang of it, they're just really useful tools, and I don't know why a lot of people don't use them. Even some of the big name photographers that you do Photoshop don't use smart objects. So you're missing out.
I've
Okay,
had problems
folks.
with smart objects where I'll put a smart object in and then I can't do certain things to the entire image because there is a smart object.
You can't do things on that object itself, but if you open it up, you can add layers to it to do things. So,
You know, what I mean is that once there's a smart object in my image, I can't do, there's some things that I can't do to the entire image because it has a smart object in it.
such as, can you think of one?
Warping.
Oh, say that again.
Warping, I think, is one.
Warping. You can, well, I want to challenge you on that.
That may not be what, I think perspective crop is also one.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had some things I've tried either as smart objects or what's the other term? And it's like I have to convert them to something. I couldn't tell you what it was because it's been a while.
You got to rasterize it first.
Yeah, I'm
Rasterize it.
thinking maybe one of these we need to just, and I know you've done this before, but like take a specific image and then just go through your whole processing workflow,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as to what you did. But yeah, I've had a couple of things where it's like, and as soon as I switched them from smart object to rasterize, that's what it is,
Right.
then I can do it, and vice versa. I've had where it's a rasterized image, and I switch it to smart object, and I can do something. But like I say, I can't tell you what it is because it's been a long time since I tried it,
I
and I'm
think,
not really good at any of it.
I think it's anything that has to do with the whole, and warp would be layer specific, so that would not be the case, but perspective crop would be because it affects the entire image.
Okay. Well, I'm actually, evolving as much as anybody with smart objects too. I'm finding new ways to do things that are non-destructive. And I just went to, what I was doing before with my banners is I was creating my banners and creating some smart objects there, which I'm still doing. And if you double click on the smart object, it opens it up and I can add layers and do things to it and then bring it back and so on. But the individuals that are going into those banners, I used to bring them in as smart objects. Now I'm bringing them in as linked objects, because if I bring them in linked, then they don't add size to the file. And then I can go back and do exactly the same thing. I can just go back into the linked file, make my changes, and it automatically updates in the banner file. So it's, things like that are things that I'm learning as I go too. But yeah, there are things, and a lot of the times whenever I'm working, I'm finding that I have to do a stamp visible layer, whatever you call it, stamp all visible. I can never remember the term there, merge visible layers or something like that. So to be able to do what I want to do, and then it becomes a destructive process from that point. So there's, I'm still finding, but I'm finding new ways to make it non-destructive or more non-destructive as we go, and learning more and more about how to use some of these smart objects so that it's as non-destructive as possible. I don't think I can get all the way through a banner or a poster with it being non-destructive though. There's something in there, some way, something I have to do. I don't have to rasterize the smart objects, but I have to merge them all together and then work from that, which basically means that from that point forward, it's destructive. But if you work at it, you can make it as least destructive as possible. So maybe that's the best way to talk about it. So yeah, we can do something like that, Chris. If maybe next time I can put together a few images and just kind of walk through everything that I do. I don't do a lot of editing though, especially in Photoshop. Most of my editing is done in Camera Raw. Unless I'm doing something special, that's only whenever I go to Photoshop. And that's what I've been saying to you guys too. You shouldn't be doing all of your editing in Photoshop. You should just be doing what you can't get done in Lightroom or Camera Raw. because then
Right,
it's definitely
yeah,
non-destructive.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I, what I do in Photoshop, and actually what I've done most is where you showed us how to do the layers with the curves and the, you know, to use that to the curves levels to do burning and dodging.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably what I've used more than anything when I've done, I need to get back into it, but, you know, I do most of my stuff in Lightroom and then just
Yeah.
do the fine tuning in Photoshop.
Yeah, and you know, and that's the way it ought to be, or that's my opinion, of course, but that, to me, that's the way it should be, because it's totally non-destructive when you do it that way. And if when you're doing things in Photoshop, it's, you know, you can make it non-destructive, but you know, fairly non-destructive, which is what I try to do. But if there's no reason to do it over in Photoshop, then why go over there at all? So, you know, there are things that I like more in Photoshop that I could be doing in Camera Raw, like the clone stamp and the healing. I hate those in Lightroom and Camera Raw. I don't have I just can't get it to work the way I'm used to working. So if I need to clone anything out, then I always go to Photoshop. It's just easier for me. And that's just a personal thing.
Yeah,
But
I've done some simple stuff in that, but yeah, if you've got anything too expensive, you need to do Photoshop.
yeah. So, all right. Well, let's see. What else was I going to say? There was something. Oh, yeah. I also wanted to do something. Now, this is a dry subject. It's not really Photoshop, but I also wanted to talk about um, resolution and understanding resolution and things like that, the PPI and those kinds of things. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So I may throw some of that in because I think there's still big misunderstanding with people about what that's all about. And even I get caught and trapped sometime with it. And I just think that it's worth talking about at least, you know, 15 minutes or so to get everybody on board with exactly what it all means. Both in Photoshop, you know, and not just Photoshop, but Lightroom and Camera Raw, but in printing as well. It's more, what I wanted to talk about is more in regard to what you see on your screen than it is printing, but just so that everybody kind of gets an idea of what it's all about. And I think I've talked about it before, but I'm still not sure it resonates with everybody real well. So
Yeah.
I did want to talk about that. And as usual, if there's anything you want me to talk about, anybody out there wants me to talk about in Photoshop, let me know, because I'm open to topics. Otherwise, I just kind of am groping for things that I'm interested in and things that I think might be of interest to you. So
Yeah.
I know, Robin, you're real good about that. So you other guys, you know, throw in your 2 cents so that I want this is for you. You know, it helps me too, because it makes me go through and make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Or at least most of the time I try to make sure. So it helps me to continue with my learning process too. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, ma'am. It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you,
All right.
Bob.
Thanks,
You
Bob.
bet.
See you.
We'll do
Good
it
night.
again next time. Good night.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Okay. How do I stop that?